What's up, guys? DS3TV here, and we are here for another video. I know we have some definitely conflicting opinions on this channel about extra history and extra credits. I as well do too, since I learned a little bit about what happened with them and why they kind of are a controversial channel. Who knew that a history channel could be that controversial? But yeah, well, educational channel, because they do like different stuff. They do not just history, but they do other stuff too. But who knew they could be that controversial? Who knew? So, what I do want to say is that if you guys don't like this, we don't have to watch it. But it's always fun to learn about different civilizations, and yeah, like we learned from Only Sarcastic Productions a little bit about the Inca Empire, and this is going to be more in depth about it. So I kind of do want to watch it, but it's up to you guys and see if you like it or not. And yeah, so let's get into it. And
Lima, 1615. The old man clutches a parcel, fat and square, that he's dragged from one end of a fallen empire to the other. He is a mixed-race Christian, the son of an Inca aristocrat and a former translator for priests, seeking to study and suppress native Andean beliefs. 15 years before, he'd had his property confiscated after suing to get his ancestral lands back. Since then, he's wandered the country observing the disappearing Inca life, compiling a chronicle complete with illustrations. It's a history of the Inca, but also a catalog of abuses by the colonial Spanish. His conclusion? Spain must reform the government in a way that protects native people and values their culture. He's carried this book, all 1,000 loose pages of it, through harsh terrain and bandit country. That it survived to this point is a minor miracle. And now, he's finally sending it to its intended recipient, the King of Spain. So Guaman Poma de Ayala takes the only copy of his life's work and hands it to a man aboard a ship. No one will see it again for 300 years.
oh wow, that is insane.
When you get off the plane, the first thing you notice is how thin the air is. And as you exit the airport, a man in a poncho offers you a styrofoam cup full of coca leaf tea to help you deal with the Andean altitude. And your hotel has oxygen tanks in the lobby. Cusco sits at nearly 3,400 meters, or 11,200 feet in altitude. When you walk the cobblestone streets, you feel dizzy and have to stop for a breath after a few blocks. And then, you start to notice something strange. Every large Spanish building in the city has been built on a foundation of Incan stone. That's because the Spanish didn't build Cusco. They merely built on top of it. It was in fact the Inca who...
That's not good either, though. They still wanted to erase their memory and their footprint right there.
who, despite the altitude, built a city here. And not just any city, mind you. A city that ruled the largest indigenous empire to ever exist in the Americas. The Inca Empire spanned 2,500 miles along the Pacific coast of South America, stretching from present-day Colombia to Chile. And it ruled as many as 12 million people. But sheer numbers can't really convey what an impressive feat that was, because the Inca also controlled some of the most varied and harsh terrain on the planet, ranging from snow-capped mountains to the humid Amazonian jungle to the Atacama Desert, parts of which haven't seen rain in nearly 400 years. Walk the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, a fairly short route you can still follow today, and you'll pass dusty valleys, lush agricultural terraces, alpine tundra, and jungle. The massive Andes themselves create these microenvironments, forcing the moisture out of passing cloud formations so part of the Inca heartland remain wet, while earth in the other areas stay powder dry. In fact, many settlements stand at altitudes that are difficult to breathe in for anyone but the Andeans, whose lungs have adapted to absorb more oxygen. Actually, after building all of these celebratory churches on the foundations of the Incan capital of Cusco, the Spanish moved the capital to Lima, partially because they couldn't handle the altitude. But despite the complexity of ruling over and building in such varied environments, the masonry of the Inca Highway cuts through all of them, at times tunneling through solid rock, winding its way through ruins of settlements, fortresses, terraces, and temples. And the Inca built this sophisticated state without iron tools, the wheel, riding or draft animals, money.
That's still interesting to me that they built it without like using. I mean, no, they used animals though. They did use animals to bring up stuff, but they didn't use wheels. So I think that was wrong because I know we saw that yesterday in the video. Always like Productions was talking about that they did use animals, but they didn't use wheels or at all. And I think they did use tools, didn't they? They had they just carried the tools with them to do and they didn't. Okay, I'm just picking apart a lot of this, but yeah, they did. Okay, so they had the they didn't have a money system because none of them did though. Like the Inca, Mayans, or Aztecs they all didn't really have a money system. They just traded. So yeah, that's true. But like 3 out of the 4 things aren't true. So yeah, I would say take it with a grain of salt.
Or a written language. However, they did have quipu, a series of knotted ropes that help them calculate complex equations and remember numbers and dates.
They did have a written language. We just seen that yesterday. I don't think they did a lot of research for this video. Like, they had a written language. That was... Yeah, I would say, I think they had a written language, didn't they? Because it was basically like symbols and stuff like that. When was this video made? It's 2019. It should have. They still should have been able to do the research because it was found in like early 2000s. Okay, I don't know. It was found before the 2000s, I believe. Like all of this research, so I'm like, I don't understand. Why is he like acting like that nothing was found?
But the rest of their culture, their folklore, their religion, and their history was all oral. Which becomes a bit of a problem when it comes to telling the history of the Inca Empire. Because while the conquest is well documented, we have no sources from before the period of the Spanish conquest.
It wasn't... I feel like I'm just interjecting with stuff that we already heard from yesterday's video. It was well documented. It was well documented by the Spanish. They did document stuff before. They wrote a lot. It's just that we didn't understand their writing. We still don't understand most of their writing. So they wrote a lot. It's just that we don't understand it.
Like the buildings of Cusco, where Spanish constructions stand on Inca foundations. All of our stories of the empire come to us to one extent or another via their colonizers. Following the Spanish conquest, dozens of priests, administrators, and former conquistadors set to work interviewing native people in order to capture the empire's oral history. And while these accounts are better than nothing, their usefulness is, mixed at best. See, after the fall of the Inca Empire, a struggle began over the empire's cultural legacy. Spanish authorities stripped the valuables from shrines, leveled temples, suppressed native religious practices, and confiscated the imperial mummies. And part of that campaign involved collecting and telling the Incas' oral histories. Some of the priests collected these stories in hopes it would assist in conversion. But many considered the Inca devil worshippers, or wrote specifically to make their rule appear illegitimate, justifying the Spanish conquest. Conversely, more sympathetic accounts came from conquistadors who married into the Inca elite and had a closer relationship with the culture. But these two can display a major gap in understanding. Even after living in Peru for decades, the Spanish didn't really understand the Inca, or any of the other people who lived under the empire's banner. Their ideas about religion, society, and politics were just too different for these chroniclers to capture accurately. For example, the Inca didn't perceive history in a linear fashion. To tell the history of their 4-province empire, they wouldn't start at the beginning. They'd tell the history of the most important province, beginning to end, before moving on to the next most important, and so on. And it's from one of these Spanish accounts that we get the date of the empire's founding. But even that is controversial, and may be entirely wrong. The closest we have to a native perspective comes mostly from a generation of mixed-race authors, the sons of marriages between Inca noblewomen and their Spanish conquerors, all Christians who were born after the empire's destruction. Among them was Blas Vieira, a mixed-race Jesuit, whose pro-Inca views, especially those about native languages being suitable for discussing church doctrine, may have led his order to imprison, then exile him to Spain. Eventually, he was murdered, and his work burned during an English pirate raid. Only a few excerpts remain from his history, mostly in the work of another half-Inca chronicler, Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, who wrote extensively on the empire's history. But while Vega's book, Royal Commentaries of the Incas, is considered the first literary masterpiece by a Native American, it has problems as a work of history. Because you see, Vega left Peru as a teenager and published his chronicles 49 years later, meaning his memory of the oral history had likely degraded. Not to mention, he was writing with a specific objective in mind, while Guaman Poma rallied against Spanish abuses, and Valera pushed for indigenous language and culture to be seen as equal. Vega portrayed the Inca Empire as a perfect society, one without poverty, where aristocrats, like his family, provided everything a person would need. In fact, it appears that this mode of argumentative history was a hallmark of Andean culture. To the Incas, it seems, history was not necessarily about capturing reality in a fully accurate picture, but rather in molding the past to make a specific point. For example, the Spanish found
I mean, like how they do in Europe. Like, you're not. In my opinion, that's no different than how they do than how Europeans view history. They just want to put stuff into a certain mold to make you feel like that they have the good national pride. I mean, they're doing the same thing. It's just that for some reason, either the person that wrote the script for this episode, or something just doesn't. They don't understand that they're talking about the same exact thing. Because I don't know, it's like he's making it more confusing than what it actually is. I don't understand why. I don't think I've ever had this much of a problem with the extra credit video. That's
multiple Incan families in Cusco told elaborate but conflicting versions of the same history, each using it to justify their claim to a piece of land. And as a result of these conflicting testimonies, modern historians have come to vastly different conclusions about the empire depending how they read the sources. And because of this, Incan society has been portrayed as everything from a communist utopia to a totalitarian nightmare. And details of the empire's founding continue to be debated. But the histories, paired with archaeology, do tell us this. In the early 13th century, a line of kings began coalescing around what would become the city of Cusco. Manco Capac, the semi-mythical founder, and as the legends say, one of the first people to walk the earth, established the kingdom of Cusco before turning to stone. Then came his successors, each taking the ruling title of Sapa Inca, each named for their greatness in construction and war. And they each took names that matched their glory, and were also pretty baller if I do say so myself, such as the valorous, generous Inca, the left-handed, the splendid accountant, the magnanimous, and my personal favorite, he who weeps blood. They built the city and expanded their territory, creating the Inca ways of life and bringing order to a chaotic world. Or perhaps not, because archaeological evidence indicates that many of the things we consider Incan accomplishments, their farming terraces, building style, agricultural products, statecraft, roads, and knotted quipu, were actually inherited from previous Andean societies. But
I mean, I don't know. I don't really know if that's true. I feel like that they're trying to just discredit them, maybe. Because wasn't it multiple societies that brought together the Incan Empire
regardless
anyway?
of their source, the Inca were about to use these tools on a scale no one had ever seen. Because in Cusco, the Sapa Inca had a son. He was not the oldest, nor the favorite of his father, but he was intelligent, brave, and with a ruthless vision. He had a birth name, but that is not how he would be known. He would be known as the Earthshaker, Pachacuti, first emperor of the Inca, and a man who would remake the world in Cataclysm. special thanks to educational tier patrons.
Okay, so yeah, talk to you in the next video, and yeah, talk to you guys. Yeah, talk to you guys in the next video, and subscribe to the channel. Want to get 1,000 subscribers by my birthday, and also, yeah, you can comment videos in the comment section down below that you want me to watch, and also, yeah, if you want me to put your name, like if you want me like to say like your channel's name or something like that in the comment section down below. You know, like you can put that in the comment section down below too, and I'll say that. If you don't have to, but yeah. Yeah, this one was kind of weird. I usually don't have that much of a problem with them. With extra credits. You know, videos like on the regular, but yeah, this one was kind of, some things were just plain wrong. Like, yeah, I'm thinking like some things were just plain wrong. But I mean, I guess that's the video. But yeah, talk to you guys in the next video. And oh yeah, also if you want me to do a video on the what's going on in Palestine and stuff like that, I can do that and have that out like probably within a week. And yeah, talk to you guys in the next video. And yeah, peace.